We can warm the cockles of your heart, though, with our next guest. He's one of the least controversial people in the country and never ever mentions his famous friends. Piers Morgan is on the line. Good morning to you, Piers Morgan.
Good morning. By the way, I love your entreaty to the British public to stay
at home
and tonight watch television at 9 o'clock.
Absolutely,
on ITV.
Well, to be fair, you're a bit of a snowflake. You're staying in. You're not at work today. You don't work a full day week. You're a bit of a snowflake.
Well, I do work. I just don't work for Good Morning Britain. So I do have a wide portfolio of work.
All right, then.
Which does not just include my morning stuff.
All right, then.
A little disingenuous to call me.
All right. Can I entreat you to keep your phone in the same position so we can actually hear you? Well, I know you're not up with modern technology, young man. But look, let's talk about your TV series. It's obviously Serial Killer with Piers Morgan. A lot of people would like to rearrange those words into a different order, perhaps. But he's become such a hate figure in this country. It's ridiculous. But it's on ITV1. It's at 9 o'clock tonight. And you meet some of the most horrific people in the world. The chap you're meeting tonight is responsible, isn't it? 13 different murders?
Yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating case because he went on a 17-year killing spree, mainly of young women in Kansas City in America. And he then stopped. So he met a woman, he fell in love, he got married, he was successful at work, he had matching Mercedes for him and his wife, they went on fancy holidays. And then 10 years later, during which time he hadn't killed anybody else, having gone on this horrendous serial killer spree, the police in Kansas City got given money for DNA and cold case testing. And they went back over a lot of unsolved murders, and they found a DNA match because he had been interviewed in connection with one of the missing women because he happened to be in the area. This is about 30 years before. And they went and literally banged through a door in a diner in Kansas City where he was having dinner 10 years after he last did anything, and they arrested him. And he was completely trapped by DNA. Otherwise, he would have got away with it. And they think, he's in for killing at least 6 people, but the police said he killed 13. But they also believe he may have killed up as many as 25 to 30. He's a very, very dangerous person.
And he's never spoken before. He's never done any interviews before about this. And again, as you mentioned, he's seemingly, like you, a well-adjusted family man. I mean, this is the thing. It's just people going about living apparently completely normal lives, but underneath have these horrific secrets.
Well, the most bizarre twist with him is that he was very happily married. So he, like I say, he stopped the killing. Then he met this woman who was completely unaware of anything that had gone on in his past. And they had a very idyllic marriage. All their friends and family had absolutely no idea what he'd been doing. And yet he brutally murdered many, many, many poor, vulnerable women. And, he's one of those guys that I've interviewed a few serial killers now for this series. And the common denominator is how normal they seem.
Yeah. And are they also quite charming? I mean, that's one of the things we know this about, say, paedophiles as well, and often, that the reason they can get access to people, the reason people trust them and get in a position where they can make people vulnerable is because they are charismatic, they are charming.
Well, they certainly have an ability to lure women into very dangerous situations. There's no question of that. I mean, when you watch this guy tonight, for a while in the interview, you might even feel a certain empathy with him. You might even start to think, can this guy really have done this? But as it goes on, and I start to push him harder, you then start to see flashes of anger and, he tries to control everything. Then you start saying some pretty unpleasant things about women, and you start to suddenly see a very different side to this poor innocent man. And the bottom line with him is the DNA is incontrovertible. They found a match on 12 of the bodies, and his only explanation was that because most of them were prostitutes, that he must have had sex with them, although he couldn't remember doing it. It was a very ugly moment in what actually turns out to be a pretty chilling interview.
Indeed. You spent a lot of time, most of your career, interviewing celebrities, haven't you? Do you prefer interviewing a celebrity about their successes, their lives, their love affairs, their falls from grace, or interviewing people like mass murderers?
Well, the truth is, I like doing both. I mean, I've got my new series of life story starts on Saturday with Pamela Anderson. You couldn't get a more different kind of interview environment than, a couple of hours with Pammy compared to a couple of hours with one of the most dangerous men in America. But the reality is, I like doing both. I think that the crime ones are really fascinating because you almost take on the role of a detective or lawyer. I mean, in most of their cases, these guys have never even given evidence, so they've never actually been confronted with their crimes by anyone outside of their legal team. And people say, why do you do them? Well, because journalistically they're fascinating, but I think predominantly it's when I go and interview the relatives of the victims, who even sometimes decades later, the pain, the raw pain that they're still going through because of what these despicable people did is so palpable. And all they really want are these people held to account. And they love the fact that I get in a room with them and end up giving them a hard time, because it's the only time they've ever, in some cases, been even asked questions about
indeed,
it.
and just get some answers about their motivations, indeed. Well, let's talk about, you say, The Life Stories, the new series. That's on Saturday night. We can't escape you, can we? With Pamela Anderson. Now, again, she's just so iconic for those of us of a certain age, Piers, in that little red swimsuit. But she's got quite interesting developments in her life since that infamous video with Tommy Lee. But her relationship with Julian Assange. She's an animal rights campaigner and the like, and she now actually campaigns against pornography.
Yeah, I mean, she's a fascinating character. She's very fun, feisty. She gives as good as she gets. She's very bright, and she's clearly had a multifaceted career. She was a Baywatch pinup. She was a Playboy centerfold superstar, and now she's an activist for everything from veganism to anti-pornography. And I asked her about that. And the reason is she's got two sons in their late teens, early 20s, and she thinks it's a real issue. I've got three sons. It is a problem out there in society that often quite hardcore pornography is so readily available to young people. I think is a damaging new facet of modern technology in society. So I actually applaud her for what she's doing, and she might be an unlikely spokeswoman for that, but actually she's doing it not as a former Playboy centerfold, but as the mother of two young sons, and I completely got that. Where she gets really interesting is about the real nature of her relationship with Julian Assange. Definitely hints at a romance there. She also hints at being more than just good friends with Vladimir Putin, which is something that I was not expecting, and I think may raise a few eyebrows.
Certainly will. I'll certainly be watching for that. Now, you're talking about someone who campaigns. Obviously, you've been campaigning rather vociferously about the issue of guns ever since actually you lived in America when you're hosting your own chat show there. You got a lot of trouble with a lot of NRA supporting Second Amendment supporters in America over that. You've been speaking out about it. You raised it in your interview with Donald Trump. You got a lot of stick for that interview, but you did raise the issue of gun control with him. And now it seems that he is looking at a possibility of some gun control measures, very limited, but that you suggested. Do you think that your personal relationship with Donald Trump, I think aren't you the only person in Britain he follows on Twitter, one of about 40 odd people in the world? Do you actually feel you have influenced American policy on guns?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, in the interview, there's a few things in that interview which actually I would say that the way that I've been able to tackle Trump about them, it has maybe affected his mindset. One was on elephant trophy hunting, where I wrote a column massively attacking his plan to undo an Obama regulation, which was preventing American hunters from bringing back trophies of elephants that they'd killed in Africa. And he actually did perform a complete U-turn over that, and he retweeted me thanking him for having a change of mind, which I took as an endorsement of the fact that I clearly had some influence. He does follow me. I'm one of the only 45 people he follows, and I think he does read the columns on guns. In that interview I did with him, I pushed him on one particular aspect of gun control, which I found particularly incomprehensible and nothing to do with Second Amendment, which is the guy in Las Vegas, which was the worst mass shooting in America's history a few months ago. He had converted his AR-15 assault rifles, which are semi-automatic and legal to buy in America, into illegal automatic machine guns by using bump stock, which is an attachment you put onto a semi-automatic rifle that converts it to automatic. Now, bump stock is also legally available, so you can buy your AR-15 and your bump stock legally and create an illegal machine gun. All machine guns are banned in America. And Trump yesterday, in fact, reiterated that he now intends to ban bump stock. Now, it may be a small thing, but actually it's more already if he gets that through than anything Barack Obama achieved on gun control in 8 years. And I've always felt in a funny way, although Trump is pro-Second Amendment and was supported by the NRA, because of his base being predominantly gun owners, he might be the person who can actually bring in just some sensible regulations. They're talking about raising the age limit for buying guns to 21. In Florida, the Florida school shooter 2 weeks ago, he's legally not able to buy a beer until he's 21, but he could buy an assault rifle and 7 other guns perfectly legally. This kind of thing is insane, even by American gun standards. So, yeah, I think with Trump, there are 2 ways of dealing with Trump. There's the way that most liberals choose around the world, which is to lie on the floor, kicking and screaming and hoping he goes away, or you engage with him because he is president of the United States, and you try and be persuasive in argument. And my experience of him from when I was competing in Celebrity Apprentice, years ago, is that actually in the boardroom, if you put up a good argument, Trump was quite happy to be persuaded to change his mind. And I just think that people at the moment still don't actually understand. He's essentially a business guy, and if you want to do business, then you got to do business with him.
Well, we shall see. Well, look, just finally, Piers Morgan, obviously I'm saying you're a bit of a snowflake because you're not on G&B today because, you can't hack a 5-day week on the early starts like
that
me.
That is true. I'm not getting out of bed that early.
And he wears as much makeup as I do on telly as well. I have to ask you, it is World Book Day today. For those people who actually are making it into school today, schools are actually open. Obviously, the kids are dressing up. You'll have had this with your 3 sons as well, dressing up and as a character on World Book Day. If we had this in offices, if you're going into the office today, what would be the character you would dress up as on World Book Day?
God, I don't know.
Would you go as Piers Morgan?
I know the book that had the most effect on me was a book called An Evil Cradling by Brian Keenan. It was one of the Beirut captors, along with John McCarthy and Terry Waite. And if you've never read that book, I would urge everyone on World Book Day, go and read it. He was chained to a radiator in a Beirut hellhole for 5 years, and his indomitable spirit combined with the fact he's a brilliant writer. Go and read that book, and you will not feel sorry about stuff like too much snow ever again.
I tell you what, there'll be millions of people across Britain loving the idea of Piers Morgan being chained to a radiator for a day. Piers Morgan,
I'll come to school as a radiator.
Absolutely, we love it. Piers Morgan, thank you very much indeed. Don't forget his serial killer TV series continues tonight, ITV 9 p.m. Thank you very much indeed to Piers. The time is 9:47. This is Talk Radio.